Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me today is Katie Menon of Stephenson House in Edmonton, Canada. Katie has had a really impressive growth and has been willing to take some risks to do things and to step outside of her comfort zone, perhaps before others might and before what some would say was the right time. Listen in as she shares her business trajectory. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michele. Thanks so much for having me today.
I am excited to talk to you.
Great. Me too.
Are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've known each other for quite a few years now, right? So I think this is a great time to catch up officially.
Yeah, and to celebrate some wonderful successes that you had. So you and I, you're right. We have run into each other over multiple years, Luann Live, different design events, and we're currently working together in a coaching relationship. You have really had some pretty big shifts and changes over this last year, and we're going to jump in and kind of celebrate that, but also share a little bit of the journey. And you probably, as much as anybody else, know that the last couple of years have been a couple steps forward and maybe a step back. And the step back's not always like a backward step, if you will, as much as a take a deep breath decision-making step. And so I'd love to explore some of that with you. But before we jump into all that, Katie, could you just share a little bit of your background of how you've been trained, where you started, and what brought you to design?
Yeah, I'd love to. And you're right, just to touch on the decision making, it does feel like the last few years I've been, making a lot of decisions. So I can't wait to unpack some of those. Yeah, so I launched Stephenson House, formerly Stephenson Interiors, officially in 2017. But the journey started much, much before that. My husband and I bought a house in 2011. I had come from an undergrad degree in political science. After I finished that, I thought, well, maybe I should go into medicine, like completely unrelated, and started working at the hospital in the surgical suite, the adult OR. Worked there for a few years. It afforded me a lot of flexibility with my schedule. I was able to do some traveling and, things like that. It was great, but I never really felt like I had a career or that I was really fulfilled work-wise. So when we purchased our house, we hired a designer. The experience was very fun, of course, and it allowed me to explore this creative side. And I couldn't believe how passionate I was about these decisions and fabrics and textiles, furniture forms, this kind of thing. So I could only take a local program for interior design because I was, married with my husband who had a career in Edmonton. And there's of course a university here, but there's no interior design degree. So I did what I could and took some continuing education courses. That was over the course of like 2.5 years. It was really structured to be a part-time program. And I completed that program just before I had my first daughter. So then I completed the program, and then had Chloe, and then 21 months later had Poppy. In between having Chloe and Poppy, I decided that I loved interior design, but that continuing ed program just wasn't quite enough for me. So I would say my typical fashion, I just really hunted down something that was going to allow me to fully develop this career. And that was a online program from the New York School of Interior Design before the whole world shifted to online, So that was a really exciting opportunity. So as I completed 2 years full time at NYSID, I was building the business sort of behind the scenes. And then things really dramatically changed when I graduated from that program in May 2020.
Wow, that's actually that still feels very close, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so strange. It feels so fast and full and comprehensive in a short amount of time. But I think over the last few years, when I started really looking back and defining the company mission and values, I could see the love affair for design from a very early age. And so I'm very, very grateful that although it was a bit of a longer path to get here, I was in my 30s when I started the business and started doing design. It feels really good now.
What's also interesting is I think because you were in your 30s and you had tried some other pathways and done some other things, I bet you there were some skill sets that you had gathered through those experiences that gave you the confidence to come right out of either continuing ed or the 2-year program and immediately start your business at the level that you've started it. Because, there's so many people that are starting that didn't have that, or, it's a harder path. You started at a good and a bad time all at the same time, right there at 2019, 2020. But I think sometimes, I guess what I'm saying is the maturity that you had and the past experience put you in a position to think about this as truly, I want a business and a career, not just here's a hobby that I'm going to, not that there's anything wrong with having this hobby. You just came to it very clear that you wanted it to be a business.
Yeah. And that's a great point, is because I think a lot of times people, I think it's more common nowadays that people are coming to career paths multiple times, right?
Right.
And starting a business later in life, or not following, your family footsteps and inheriting a family business. Like this is more common now. And I think it is an opportunity for everybody to, draw on past experiences. You might have to look a little deeper, a little harder, but my degree in political science, very writing intensive, right? We wrote a lot of papers looking at the world, and governments and regimes and all of this very critically. So really able to articulate my thoughts and opinions. And that has been key with interior design. I remember hearing Alexa Hampton speak at a New York School of Interior Design event. And somebody asked, what do you look for when you're hiring an interior designer? And she said, I want somebody who can articulate in a, expert, clear way what it is they like about a room. Because if you just use words to define things like, oh, this is so beautiful, this is pretty, this is luxury, you can only use those words so many times. So
we actually start to tune those words out because they seem so repetitive. Like I wouldn't expect you to come in and tell me that it was anything other than that if you had designed it, right?
Yeah.
So they almost lose their meaning, that they don't pack that powerful punch.
Yeah. So being able to articulate, ideas, and we're always selling ourselves and our ideas. So that was great. And then working in the adult OR, in a very, very high paced, critical environment, my role was very logistical and putting all the pieces in place to facilitate these surgeries, often in emergency situations. I always said when we worked there, it's not like I was working in a chocolate factory. Like we really had to be on the ball and multitask. And it gave me great insight into the personalities and how people in that environment worked. And those people are now my clients. So I feel like I gained a lot of perspective being on the inside there that I was then able to use in my business now and tailor my processes to sort of their train of thought, their busy schedules, how they want to interact with people. Yeah, that kind of thing.
What's also interesting is the idea of triage, which is what happens in the ER. You're looking at, here are all these things happening at one time. What's most important now? What's the next right thing to do? How do you keep calm when everything around you is going all to heck? There's so many lessons from that you can learn, because when you walk into a job site or construction site where things are happening and lots is going on, and you've got to immediately take all that information in, parse it out, and kind of form a plan of action, or calm down somebody on the other side, or be that chill presence that just gets things done, that methodically creates a way, logistically separates out what has to happen. There's a lot of that skill set in addition to the communication skill set that you learned from, the political science. So I can see a lot of just really great learning. See, I think that's also interesting, Katie. So many people think that we learn in a silo, and we don't. That's what makes everybody so individual, is you're bringing all of that history into the work that you do and what you do and how you do and the processes that you create. Your processes are created because you have worked on other processes, even if they were different. So it's really neat to see and to hear. I don't think I ever knew that you worked in the surgical area.
Yeah, for a long time, 10 years. So
wow.
Yeah. I think coming onto the scene or tuning in at a time when there were people filling a gap in the industry for the business side of running an interior design business. So I don't know how I got into it. I don't know how I got connected with all of you great advisors and coaches and business owners. But I did. And that was another opportunity where I was really able to, on my own accord, just invest as much time and energy as I could to developing the business side of things.
Now, when you got your degree, did you know, and I know you'd been kind of building on the side, maybe it's even before that, here's a better way for me to ask it. When did you know, Katie, that you wanted to go into business for yourself versus going to work for another designer and kind of working out that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's two answers to that. One is that I was a mother to two small children. And the idea that I, wouldn't be able to craft our office hours around when I drop them off or pick them up and those other, family obligations or experiences that I wanted to be a part of, that was sort of a key influence. And then Edmonton is kind of a unique place. And it's the uniqueness has influenced a lot of the decision making in my business. But starting with creating something of my own, I just didn't feel like anybody was doing what I wanted to be doing at Edmonton. It was an opportunity for me to bring something to the city that nobody else was doing.
So when you decided to go out on your own, what was your initial idea of what you were going to build and create?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know if I had really defined that. I kind of just started with projects of friends and previous colleagues. I started working with some of the surgeons that I had been working with in the OR who had spent so much of their lives dedicating themselves to their craft that then when they finally get out and start working and earning a salary, some of them who hadn't had spouses or families or anything yet, because again, they had just been traveling for work and then finally set some roots and purchase a house, they didn't have like the first idea of where to start. So I think I was just focused on those individual relationships at first, and the joy and satisfaction of being able to help them undertake a task that they had absolutely nothing, no knowledge of. So
right. And did you start home-based, or did you start with a space outside of your home initially?
No, home-based. So yeah, we were lucky to have a really nice little office with its own bathroom, with beautiful natural light. And because I had been doing my degree from home for 2 years, I had a really good setup with all my resources there. It's funny though, because I'm sure we'll get there, but I look at where I am today, and not that long ago, I think about when I was working out of that office and then brought my first employee in who joined me in that home office and, had a 3-year-old running around in a Elsa costume 1 minute, maybe no clothes the next minute. But yeah, that home office served me really well for the first year and a half, I guess.
Okay. So, all right. So you started that prior to your, I'm going to say, official graduation.
Yeah.
From design school. How far into that were you, Katie? I mean, and you can either state it by months or whatever frame of reference you want. How far in were you before you thought, I need to bring in help? And then what was the first position that you hired for?
Yeah, that's great. So March of 2020, obviously an easy reference point, unfortunately, was when, like, I guess January, February, March of 2020, I was getting busy with some design clients, and I knew the graduation was, and the degree program was coming to an end a few months later. So I felt comfortable sort of taking on clients and being able to phase that work and balance the schedules. And then continue to get more and more interest, I guess, throughout the summer from people that I didn't know, referrals, finding me on Instagram and that kind of thing. So it was September of 2020 that I brought on my first employee into the house, very specifically part-time. You know, I distinctly remember the conversation being like, okay, well, I really need a bit of help. Part-time is what we can do for right now.
And what role did she come in to fill?
Yeah, you know, and again, as I look back on that and compare it to where we're at currently, she was pretty much working right alongside me. So we would work in tandem. Tasks were very similar. Maybe she was doing a little bit more drafting because I was doing a little bit more business. But in terms of the design, we would work, you know, really closely intertwined on every project. And the separation of roles wasn't as clear.
Did she have a design degree?
She had a 2-year interior design technologist, so quite drafting.
Okay. So she did have some of the drawing and maybe the more technical aspect behind her. Okay. All right. Awesome. And then how long did it last for just the two of you? Because we're still not far removed. I mean, this is going to be, you know, coming out in the April, May timeframe.
Right.
But we're recording this in March of 22, and we're talking about within the last 2 years, and then a year and a half, if it was September of 21, within the last year and a half is when you made your first hire. And I say that because I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans. You've got a brick and mortar storefront that has already expanded, like before you could hardly get open, you were expanding, you know, you've crossed into the 7-figure mark. I mean, you're doing like all these crazy things. And we're talking about 2 years ago, you were still taking courses.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So September, I hired Morgan, and then a really great opportunity. Well, I knew I needed to take that next step and get a little bit more help as, you know, demand and continue to grow. And Morgan and I obviously switched Morgan from part-time to full-time before we took on more help. And that was very, very quick. I think that was honestly like 6 to 8 weeks, maybe. As soon as we started working together, it was like, okay, now we're really rocking.
Well, and it was perfect timing too, because my gosh, that's when everybody was sitting at home. We'd been at home for 6 months and people were going, I hate my space, fix my space. And so it was just, because I remember, you know, it feels weird to look back now that we are, I mean, seriously, almost exactly 2 years out. Right. And I remember thinking in that March, April, May timeframe, okay, what's getting ready to happen? Because so many things like ground to a halt so that they could pick back up. And then when it started, it's almost like an avalanche, right, of calls and reach outs. And I mean, my program grew because people were like, how do I even handle I had already started shifting into scaling businesses. I did that in December of 19, January of 20, not even, of course, having any idea of what was coming. And then just started watching and seeing and witnessing kind of the tide turn. And so while the timing felt probably very like, oh my gosh, what have I done in that March, April, May, June timeframe, man, when it twisted, you were set up in a perfect situation, Katie.
Yeah, it really feels that way. And I remember also listening to podcasts and hearing people in the industry, talking to friends. We had group chats on Instagram. I remember hearing people, because everyone kind of stopped their projects in March, right?
Well, they didn't know what to do, right? Everybody was just kind of like shell shocked. Yeah,
absolutely. And rightfully so. And I remember hearing fellow designers being like, okay, well, this is great. Like, I'm going to use this opportunity to work on my processes. And I was like, man, I wish I had some time for that, but I was still doing, the degree program, and I was still working with some clients. I didn't really have time to stop. And that's what was also unique about the program at New York is, we were continuing on our classes. So yeah, that, and then being at Edmonton too. I mean, this is the most northern city in North America of this size, over 1 million people. It's dark and cold here in the winter. And so I think the concept of going into another winter as the fall was, approaching, was still so much uncertainty around COVID and people not being able to get away to Hawaii or Mexico or Florida. They were like, yeah, let's go. This is the perfect opportunity to, I'm not going to stare at that living room wall any longer. So yeah, it was kind of and I think people in the industry say like, we're not grateful for how that all worked out, of course, but the industry has seen remarkable growth and demand, and we didn't have to sell it so hard anymore, right? Our value.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So, okay. So September, you pretty much bring her into full time. When you hired the next person, what was that role, and how long were you still staying in your home office for a while? Or was that the point where you're like, we've got to take another step out?
We actually were not in the home office for very long. It became pretty clear to me with my children, running around, that this wasn't going to be fair to an employee, that I wanted to be able to offer her, since she was coming on full time. I mean, she would never have said, hey, I'm not okay with this. Can we move to an office? But I just thought, I want to be able to offer her more. And the idea too, that the clients that we were serving, it would be great to be able to serve them in a better environment. And we weren't able to really go out to coffee shops and restaurants and, in the same way you think about realtors or designers or people, coming and going from houses and coffee shops. We weren't really able to do that. Restaurants were completely closed. So
what's also interesting, Katie, is even for you, because I know being a mom, and when I was at home and my kids were younger, even if I was off to the side working, I was constantly watching. So I didn't get to just kind of disconnect. And my kids had a harder time if I was there sometimes, because they wanted to interrupt and they wanted to come in. And so then it almost made me feel bad to have to say, you can't really talk to me right now. So
I think that's a very hard concept for a small child to understand, right?
Yeah, you're here, but I can't talk to you. I can't come in. We can't play. What do you mean? And so in some ways, it actually was probably as much a gift to you and to your own sanity and to your children as it was to her. I mean, again, I stayed home, no slam against those who do. I think there's multiple ways to do it. But I also know that I worked my best when my kids were at school, and that it was so much harder when they were home and when I was home, until they got older and we could really create those boundaries. And when they're little like that, they just don't understand. And it's
no. And I also had a glass door.
Oh.
So it was even harder. It was even harder. So.
I could just see in my mind's eye the little handprints and the little smush face prints on the door, like, Mom, are you coming out
and
yet?
Mom's going, shh, no, not right now. Yeah, I'm on the phone. So yeah, so I had to start with what I could. And that was an office space that was a co-working space, but it was a private office in an industrial part of town. It was cute, but it wasn't the end goal, that's for sure. But it was a place to go to with a pretty affordable rent.
It was an interim step, right? It was the interim.
And I didn't have to calculate. I didn't have to think about a build out. I didn't have to think about utilities. It was just a flat monthly fee.
And so you guys were there how long?
Oh gosh. Okay. And we also moved there. The other thing that precipitated that move is because I was adding to the team and I was bringing on interns, the golden ticket interns. So again, how was I possibly going to accommodate 3 staff members in my house?
Sure.
So they were joining the team in May 2021, and we moved in there, I think, that month. Like, we started there May 1st and welcomed them to our new makeshift office using furniture that had been, damaged from client projects, and just slapping it all together.
I think we started working together not long after that, right?
Oh, I think so.
It wasn't too long.
A little later that summer.
It was around summer, yeah,
Yeah.
because you had already certainly moved in at that point. So, how was it bringing on a team? I mean, I know how it is from our conversations, but how was it? I mean, there's something really exciting about bringing on team members, but there's also something really weighty about bringing on team members. How did you make that transition? Because we both know, as well as anybody listening, it also took you out of some of the day-to-day. Like, you now not only have to do your work, but you have to manage people and projects and clients and expectations. Like, there's so much more to manage and to lead.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that there's a shifting of the demands and the workload, and that it doesn't necessarily right away get better. And I knew too, hiring students, that I would have to be very specific in the type of, tasks or projects that I was delegating to them. I couldn't overwhelm them and have them start or work on a project start to finish.
Right.
We worked closely. It was an open room, no individual offices or separation. And that was helpful. And using software like Asana, I was using that right away, so I could give people clear direction with measurable tasks and, like a little to-do list. And I felt like if I had set them up with a to-do list, essentially in the most basic sense every day, that they would feel like they were accomplishing something, that they knew what they do. If they needed help or some direction on those individual things, no problem. But it wasn't like they were sitting there, twiddling thumbs, being like, what do I do now? What do I do now? It was a question that was specific to the task, It was great bringing them on. I was able to increase, our team. I think we talked about this before, is that I brought them on and got grants for working.
Right. I remember that.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, the government actually paid 50% of their wage, which was a great way to sort of experiment with that expanded capacity before, having someone leave another position and bring them on full time, where they had a lot more to lose if it wasn't going to work out and I couldn't continue that.
Well, and you also got a taste of what does it feel like to have a team of this size? What is the amount of workload that we can handle and that we need to be able to sustain to keep everybody employed? So that actually turns out to be a bonus on both sides, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. I wouldn't have, written that experience any differently. I was really happy with that summer.
So tell me, so that was last summer of 21.
Last summer.
I know,
yeah.
A few short months ago. So where was it in that process, Katie, that you began thinking and dreaming of this isn't the end of what I'm doing? Like, I'm not just going to sit here for the next 5 years and us work out of maybe this one big co-working space, but I've got dreams for something different. When did you know that was part of your dream, to open up a space that has design and some retail element in the front? When did that come along?
Yeah, I think it was during that summer, and it was the experience of having that expanded team, and for the first time kind of seeing with these new resources what was possible. And that was really exciting. The clients we were working with were just so fabulous and really letting us do our thing creatively and bring in amazing pieces and create concepts that were very complete and fulfilling. Not every client is like that. Sometimes you're doing project work that you're limited by budgets and styles, but we really had a great summer with fabulous projects. And I thought there was just some element in calling for visibility and being able to connect with more people and feeling the appetite, from our clients and other people in the city, just through conversations of wanting more. And Edmonton is a very unique place, again, where we always want to be somewhere else in a sense, it's fairly blue collar here, and the winters aren't great. And so people are always thinking, oh, in Vancouver, in Montreal, in Toronto, and, dreaming of other places. But then when we do get to bring something to the city that is, akin to those exciting opportunities in the other city, people really do rally behind that. And so it was just like, you know what? I think if we are the first ones to bring this to the city, I think people are going to support us and this is going to be really successful.
You said something, you used a phrase that I think you and I had also talked about in the pre-show and when we were just talking, and that is last summer you were able to see what was possible. And I think that's a key. You and I were also talking, you had listened to Carol Lang's episode, and we'll link that in here. And Carol's in the coaching program with us as well. And she was sharing some of her journey and sharing about, kind of making her plans 1 year out, 3 years out, how far out she felt like she could go or couldn't go just based on where she is and what she's doing and what's in front of her. And, you and I were just kind of riffing on that back and forth as a concept of how do you know I can look out 3 years, 5 years. And I know one of the things I said to you was when I first started my coaching business back in 2013, I didn't even know what was possible. So I couldn't have dreamt that I would be where I am doing what I'm doing in exactly the way. I certainly, as time went on, got closer to, being able to create a strategic plan that had more detail. But it was such a new thing to me that I didn't even know what was possible. But once you catch sight of what's possible, wow, that's where the dreaming really starts to happen. And you start to see kind of all the different ways that it could go. So my guess is that when you realized what was possible last summer, you had the opportunity to solve that challenge, if you will, bringing some of these ideas and items from, all around other provinces of Canada into Edmonton. But you chose to do it the way that you chose to do it. What were some of the did you look at other avenues? Did you stress test it? Or was it immediate? Oh my gosh, that's it. Open up a place.
Well, I mean, I had been going down to High Point, before I had the office, even the temporary office, I feel like I went to High Point before I, really should have gone to High Point, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I was just excited to go and connect with the people that we had met at Luann Live and, people, Candy coming from Chicago and Jenny coming from Arizona and just connecting with everybody. And I think throughout my business and basically my life, I kind of just did things before it was maybe the obvious step. And when you would do that, I mean, something even as like when I did my high school online, right? Like grade 7 was the last year I did in a school. And then I thought, the heck with this. I'm going to wrap this up real quick. I've got other things to do. I did grade 8, 9, and then high school in 2 years. And I was out of there and then in Europe. Yeah. And then just with, the design programs and things, I feel like I kind of always just jumped in a little bit early. And so going to High Point, seeing the world of, working directly with vendors and not relying on, maybe retail sources that a lot of designers typically kind of start out doing. I just skipped that.
You just shortcut all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I got an idea of, hey, I could really dictate and decide what I bring in to my design projects and then eventually to our retail store, that was exciting. And, that felt really, really good and would allow me to bring that missing element to the city and to my company. And then the next step was just finding, this location that I'm in, which is just absolutely perfect. I couldn't have dreamed of a better spot to, currently be in with our design studio and store. So just a few little, that's all it takes, is just a few little indicators along the way that feel really good.
I love that. The idea of I kind of started doing some things before they were known, before it was all the rage or whatever. But you also made, I think, some really good connections. My guess is some at Luann Live and other places, but like Jenny and Candy and some of these, I mean, these were more established than you were at the time.
Absolutely.
Relationships, they were still learning, they're growing, you're watching their success, you're staying connected to them. So if we were to tell anybody, here are a couple of things to consider, it's find your crowd, find the people that you can connect with and stay connected, right? Learn from what you hear and what you see in the resources around you. You used your resources, whether you could travel or whether you couldn't travel. But let's talk about this. How much does fear drive you or not drive you? Because, are you a risk taker by nature? Because you've really stepped out and done some things that other people maybe would shy away from or not be as confident in taking that step as quickly.
Yeah, I mean, fear definitely, it plays in. And I think the more you sort of take on, the more you have to potentially lose, right? So there's an increased sense of, I guess, just calculation now, maybe in my steps. But I have always had that innate confidence and belief in myself. And then it was as soon as I got a little bit of recognition with those clients and the projects that I was doing a good job, and that I really can do this. Okay, great. Let's make this a thing. And then another key element in that sort of fear risk taking sphere is I would often turn to my husband and say to him, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Like, I mean, I have business coaches too, right? So that was one great element, but my husband is the one who is making sacrifices at home and, picking up kids, or I'm not home late at night. So it was really important to me to have his opinion on a lot of those decisions. And I would say, like, what is the answer? And he would say, listen, like, there is no answer here. This is just your tolerance for what's the worst that could happen if this is what I do. And only you can decide that. And you have to just choose a path. And it's only from that decision and that path that then you can, re-navigate and adjust as needed. But there is no answer here. And I think as soon as
I love that. There is no answer. The answer is, what are you going to do next?
Yeah. As soon as I understood that and sort of had that filter, to put these decisions and
it's very freeing.
Through, yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. What am I so worried about? Who's judging me? What's the consequence on the other side of this? Just, internally, financially, I don't know. But all of those things, we could deal with and adjust. So, yeah.
The Katie that I know now is the Katie that was also informed by that 7th grader who said, why do I have to go to school and do it this slow and do it this way? Can I create my own path? Where did that Katie come from? Were you raised to find your own way and not follow the conventional model and just go out and do your thing? The Katie that at 16, 17 goes to Europe, like, where did that's the Katie that has been able to create what you've created. What created that Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, looking to some of my childhood experiences is, really the only source of possible explanation.
Sure. Right.
So yeah, my parents divorced when I was quite young, and I had a little brother, and my mom, worked really hard to support us and allow us to do soccer and tournaments and all of these things. Like, she rarely said no in trying to provide everything that she could for us. So I definitely assumed a bit of a caretaker role pretty early on, and also went out and got a job as soon as I could, and tried to, pay for things by myself and help out. And then I did get a chance to travel quite a lot as a child, having also dual citizenship with England. And I think being exposed to different ways of life and being able to travel and take some adventures in a younger age really just gave me some confidence. So I traveled a lot of the world alone, and even in high school and that kind of thing, lived in England for a year, traveled Central America for a year. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. It's interesting when I talk to people who talk about having a love for all these other things. A lot of it was formed in those young years, and it was because they were traveled are well-traveled. They were exposed to things outside of what was in their area. I was just having a conversation for another podcast. And, I made the comment, I didn't travel so much as a child. That really 45, 50 years ago, I'm in my mid 50s. It wasn't a thing in our area. People didn't travel. I didn't get on a plane until I was 21 years old. It just had never done that. And, didn't even know interior design was a career. Didn't even know what it was. Like, it just was like, what? And so I do think a lot comes from what we are exposed to and how we're exposed to different ideas and worlds and thinking.
Yeah, and there was a flip side of that too. It wasn't all, jet setting and that kind of thing. We did move around a lot. We were in rental houses because, my mom was, like I said, raising 2 children by herself. And I remember moving into these houses and making a bedroom out of an unfinished basement in some situations. And I went full, Austin Powers themed in that space. And as I look back at, the different houses that we lived in, I was already designing rooms, just to create a more comfortable, safer place that I felt, I could call home, even though I didn't have maybe that quintessential or ideal, family home that we were raised in for 18 years.
So how do you think all of that has informed the way that you design today?
Just really being able to make meaningful changes in people's lives. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but I can appreciate so much what having a comfortable home did for me as a child, and being surrounded by beauty as I traveled elsewhere, and the feelings that evoked. And again, in Edmonton, where people are often going away to experience, lovely things, why can't my Edmonton clients have that in their own homes?
Yeah, here, now, instead of a week. Right. Yeah. Instead of a week every couple of months, why not every day? So, Katie, tell us what your business and space look like today, and then tell us what's next.
Sure. So today we have November 7th of 2021, we opened, Stephenson House, the brick and mortar location. And I had 3 full-time employees, Morgan, of course, who started it all with me in my house, and then somebody who was helping with retail, and then another full-time designer. And our retail space was just feeling a little bit too small. And I thought, gosh, everybody and people around me, my photographer who I've been working with for many years, she'd worked with some other businesses. She just said, if you're feeling like it's too small already, it's going to feel really small soon. And 1,200 square feet was a good size. And we had done, of course, some great space planning and whatnot, but I was only the second commercial tenant in this mixed use commercial residential building. And so there was a space next door, same size, same layout, that very quickly I had to decide to also take on. There was an offer from a barber shop. And I thought, well, A, I'm not really sure I want a barber shop for a neighbor. And B, it would be so great to open this wall at the front of the studio and piggyback off of what I've already created in this beautiful build out. So I think it was December 1st, I signed the new lease agreement. So it was 3 weeks after we had opened the doors here that it was all signed and done for the expansion, which is well underway. I'm not sure if you've been able to hear any drywall saws, but opening April 2021 for, I think it'll be about 1,700 square feet of additional retail space, and just hired another full-time designer who's graduating this spring to help manage the retail side, and doing some interviews for new interns to be joining us this summer.
Wow. That is a lot from 2 years ago, still being in school.
Yeah, it's a lot. And there's this weird sense of, holy cow, how did this all happen so fast? And then there's also this feeling that it's just all meant to be, and the pieces are falling into place, and it feels really good.
So do you have any other bigger plans, or are you kind of in a place of let me wrap my arms around all that this can be in its fullness.
Yeah, I mean, that has definitely entered. So there have been a few other opportunities in terms of having the brick and mortar space that I've really had to put some thought into. I considered like, should I put a flower, like a fresh flower offering over here to get people in the door? And, fresh flowers goes really well with home design. And I fully explored that avenue. And then there was a point where I was like, whoa. Let's not do too much too soon here. I think the next year and going into, I don't want to say a COVID-free summer because who knows, but going into sort of the first season that might feel like this isn't going to be such a roller coaster and people are really excited to get out. I am focusing on the next 12 months just to see how this goes before I make any firm decisions in any other directions. But
so has your community been really excited about what you've brought to it and a new place to shop and something new to do? Have you noticed that?
Oh yes, the support has been great. And I think on the heels of COVID and supporting local businesses, has become even more of a priority for shoppers. So I'm looking forward to the increased visibility and being able to support clients. And then a big section of the market that I wasn't able to service before. And now everybody will be able to kind of come in and get a little piece of the Stephenson house brand that we're really excited to share.
Oh, that sounds so fun. I'm so excited for you. It's been fun to have kind of that really more detailed vision of what you're doing and how you're growing and what's happening. And to be able to see that and to watch some of the different decision-making kind of exercises that you've worked through. And I just want to say this, there are also, and we didn't get into a lot of them, there are also plenty of things that you don't know.
Oh yeah.
Right. There are plenty of things that all of us don't know. So, but what I love about working with you, Katie, is you were like, okay, I don't know this. I feel strong over here. I feel weaker over here. Help me create some strength in this area, or, let's test this or test that. I love that you're always thinking and strategizing, but at the same time, slowing down enough to try to understand what you can and to pull in the right people around you to help with that. You've invested not only in your own education and learning, but you've invested in a good team. You've got a good set of employees, and you've invested in vendor relationships. You've invested in relationships with other support people around you, as well as with coaches and consultants and things like that. So, I do think it is important to be just really upfront with the fact that you've invested time, effort, energy, and money into building what you're building. You certainly didn't go so slow as to build it only with profits and everything that came just from one or two design.
No.
That's what some people sometimes think. Right. Oh, and it's fine. There is a slow way to growth that says, I'm going to only build with money, with profits that I make from design. But then there's another way that says, I've proven that I can do it. I'm going to have to infuse some cash to be able to build this, or take on some strategic debt to be able to move this forward at the size that I need to do it. And I just think you've been really smart at looking and thinking, and then also looking at grants and looking at other ways to do things around you. So there's some really detailed work, and then there's a scrappiness going on too. And I like it.
Yeah. And I think, there's sort of two key things there. Like, we've been working together for a year. We're going to continue to work together for another year at least, because I feel like the path that I've been on and the things that I've implemented or absorbed in the last year is great, but I still have a lot of work to do. And now I have a lot of team members in place, and I'm going to be able to tackle, some different angles. And I'm really looking forward to that. And it's the same kind of thing, that I tell my clients, like, yes, design fees are a big investment up front, but it's far more costly to not work with us. Like, 40% of our current clients are throwing away newish furniture or ripping out new finishes because it didn't execute like they thought it would. And now they're in, really costly situations having to redo it. And it's the same thing. Like, yes, there is an expense to having business coaching and that support along the way, or going to, events like Luann Live. But I can only imagine where I would be if I hadn't had all of that support and those resources along the way. So I think it's one of those things that it's a necessary investment in order to get the kind of results that I wanted.
Yeah. Well, you've done a beautiful job at it. And I'm excited to see all the success that you're going to have over the next year. Who knows? You may have a flower shop in a year. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us today and sharing your journey.
Thanks, Michelle.
It was so fun to catch up with Katie, celebrate her success, and hear about her journey. Some of the details that she shared were even new to me, and I really just love hearing the nuances and talking about business with such smart, savvy women like Katie. Katie is a member of my Designers Inner Circle program, where we focus on helping successful women grow and scale their interior design firms. If you want more information on how to grow and scale your business the way Katie has also learned to grow and scale hers, check out the Work With Me page on the website at scarletthreadconsulting.com. Growing with a plan leads to profit, and profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.